Hey guys, welcome back to Economics Verified. So, if you're watching this video, you're probably preparing for this paper, which is Sectoral Issues in Indian Economy. And I know this paper can feel a little overwhelming because the syllabus is huge, as we can see here. There are 4 units, and the reading list is even bigger if we take a look. And your exam is coming up. So, that is exactly why I'm here to help you out. And in this video, I'm going to do something really important for you. Okay, so I'm going to break down the entire syllabus for you guys. Okay, that what is this paper about in the simplest possible language. And what I'm going to do is that I'm going to tell you that if you have 4 units, let's say, then what is each unit trying to explain, right? Which question have come from which unit in this actual exam, and what is my plan. I'll discuss my plan with you so that you can follow it and score good marks. So stick with me till the end because the strategy part at the end is really important. Okay, so we'll cover this video in two parts. Okay, so let's start with part 1. So part 1 is, what is this paper actually about? Okay, so first let me tell you something, that this paper, which is Sectoral Issues, our paper is called Sectoral Issues, right, in the Indian economy. So this paper is basically asking you one big question, right, which is, how has India's economy performed since independence? Okay, we are talking about the period since independence, right? How has India's economy performed since independence? And in two sectors, we are dealing with two sectors. The first sector is agriculture, and the second sector is industry, right? So we are mainly focusing on these two sectors. Okay, so that's it. This whole paper revolves around these two sectors and how did they grow, right? How did the two sectors grow, right? What went wrong with them, right? What policies were made? We are going to discuss what policies were made, right? What are the current problems? We are going to discuss about the current problems in both of these sectors and what can be done, right? So now the paper is divided in 4 units. Let me explain each one to you in very super simple language. Okay, so we have unit 1, which is agricultural performance since independence, right? So what is this unit actually about? And as you can see, this is your foundation unit. This is your foundation unit, very important unit. Okay, when we'll take a look at the pyq, you'll realize why this is a very important unit. And before you can understand any problem in Indian agriculture, you need to understand how agriculture has performed since 1947, because this is the period that we're talking about, right? Think of it this way, that imagine you are a doctor. Okay, let's say you are a doctor, and before you can diagnose what's wrong with a patient, you need to know their history, right? You need to know what has happened with them. So similarly, that's what unit 1 does. It gives you the history of Indian agriculture. So what are we going to discuss here? We are going to see the history of Indian agriculture. What has been the history of Indian agriculture, right? Okay, so the key questions that unit 1 is going to answer is that how much did, let us write it here, that how much did agriculture output, agricultural output and productivity, agricultural output and productivity grow after independence? By how much did your agricultural output and productivity grow after independence? Okay, we are talking about after independence, after the end of the colonial rule. Okay, so this is the first question that unit 1 is going to answer, right? Then second question is, what was the role of land, right? Role of land, say, what do we mean? Bring more, did we bring more land under farming? Okay, so what was the role of land like? Was more land included in the farming or not? Okay, so this is the second question that we will be answering through unit 1. Then the third question is, what was the role of labor? Okay, so here we are talking about the role of land, and here in the third question we'll be talking about the role of labor. What was the role of labor? Okay, what do we mean by this role of labor? Se kya matlab hai, that how many people were working in agriculture, right? How many people were actually working in agriculture and how productive they were, right? Because we also know of something as disguised unemployment, right? So we want to ask that, were people actually, contributing to the productivity, or were they just ideally just sitting around? Okay, so this is the third question. Then we have to talk about the different phases of agricultural growth. If you have seen the pyq, you must have been through this question, that what are the different phases of agricultural growth. So what we basically want to know that what happened in the period of 1950s, then 1960s, then 1970s and 1980s. Okay, so we want to talk about the different phases of agricultural growth, right? And we also need to discuss something in unit 1 which is known as green revolution, and we all know very well about what is the green revolution. We need to connect it to the unit 1, right? So we need to know how India went from being a food importing country, we were a food importing country, and how did we survive and how did we become, we were dependent on American wheat, as we all know, right? We, how did we become self sufficient from this point? दिस इज व्हाट वी वांट टू आंसर, ठीक है? पहले हम फूड इंपोर्टिंग कंट्री हुआ करते थे, तो हम सेल्फ सफिशिएंसी कैसे हमने अचीव की, दिस इज व्हाट वी वांट टू नो, सेल्फ सफिशिएंट इन फूड ग्रेन्स, ठीक है? वी वांट टू आंसर दिस क्वेश्चन, ऑलराइट? Okay, so this was all about unit 1, that how Indian agriculture grew, where it succeeded and where it struggled, right? So this was unit 1. Let's come to unit 2 then. So, Unit 2 is the policy environment, food security, nutritional concerns, MSPs, agriculture price policy, subsidies, cash transfers, the PDS system, and the capital formation, right? So, Unit 2. So, Unit 2 is about the policy environment, okay? It's about the policy environment. Now, what are we going to discuss in Unit 2? So, Unit 2 is where we've moved from performance to policy. Okay. In Unit 1, all we discussed about was the performance of agriculture, right? So, how did we move from performance to policy? That is what Unit 2 will teach us, right? So, now that you know how agriculture is performed, Unit 2 is going to ask you what did the government do about it? That is what policy is, right? So, we have to talk about food security first thing. We need to talk about, is every Indian getting enough to eat, right? What is the government doing about hunger? Okay, about malnutrition. Okay, so we need to talk about these things in unit 2. Okay, what else do we need to discuss? We need to discuss about something which is MSP, minimum support price, right? So the government promises farmers a minimum price for their crops, right? Minimum price, right? So we need to talk that, does this actually work? Does it help farmers or does it create problems? Okay, so we are going to discuss about MSP. Then there is something called as agricultural price policy. Okay, agricultural price policy. This means that how does the government decide prices in agriculture? How is government determining the prices in agriculture? Okay, so agricultural price policy is going to tell us about that. Then we're going to talk about subsidies, right? We are going to talk about cash transfers. Okay, so we are going to discuss in detail what is subsidy, what is cash transfer, right? So should the government give farmers subsidies on inputs? What are the inputs in agriculture? We have fertilizer, right? We have fertilizer, we have electricity. These are the inputs. So should the government give subsidies on these inputs, or should it just give them cash directly, which is the cash transfer part, right? Then we have the PDS. What is PDS? PDS is public distribution system, okay, which is the ration shop system, if you all know. Okay, so what is PDS? How well does it work in ensuring that food reaches the poor? We need to discuss about that. And then lastly, we have something called as capital formation. Now, what is capital formation? Capital formation may we are going to see, is enough investment happening in agriculture or not? Okay, we are going to look at the investment part. Let's come to unit 3 then. So what is unit 3 about? Unit 3 is the current issues in Indian agriculture. As we can see, it's about the current issues in Indian agriculture. Okay, so this is the most diverse unit. Why do we say that it's the most diverse unit? Because this is where you'll look at what is happening in Indian agriculture right now. Okay, so we'll discuss about the current challenges and the current debates. Okay, so what are we going to talk about in unit 3? Let us discuss quickly that. So I'll write it here, unit 3. So in unit 3, we are going to look at something which is known as resource use efficiency. Resource use efficiency. So this means that, are we using water, fertilizer, and other inputs wisely or not? Okay, so this resource use for efficiency is going to tell us whether we are using our resources like water, fertilizer, and other inputs wisely or not. Okay, then we have something called as crop diversification. We have crop diversification. So we are going to talk about, are the farmers, should, do they need to grow the same wheat and rice forever, or should they shift to other crops also, like fruits, vegetables, and other crops to earn more, right? So this is crop diversification. Then we're going to talk about sustainable agriculture. Sustainable agriculture. So what is sustainable agriculture? This means that can we keep farming the way we are, or are we destroying our soil, our water, and our environment, right? So we need to ask this question. Okay. Then what do we need to discuss? It is something called as dry land and organic farming. What do we mean by dry land and organic farming? So what about farmers who don't have irrigation, right? They don't have irrigation facilities, right? What about organic farming? What is zero budget farming? There is something known as zero budget farming. Okay, so we need to talk about all of this. What is zero budget farming? What is organic farming, right? Then we also need to talk about trade and competitiveness. What is trade and competitiveness? So in economics, when we talk about competitiveness, we mean that the ability to export, right? So how competitive is Indian agriculture in the global market? We need to discuss about that. Then we have the use of new technology. Okay, as you all know, we also have the advent of AI, so we also need to talk about how technology and AI, how technology changing in how is technology changing farming. Okay, how is technology helping farming? Then we have markets that we need to discuss. We need to talk about infrastructure, right? Then we need to talk about crop insurance, which is important, right? What is the meaning of crop insurance, right? Are farmers protected against their losses? And lastly, we need to talk about what is agricultural finance. What is agricultural finance? Okay, so these are the topics, these are the current issues as well that we need to discuss going ahead in unit 3, as you can see. Then coming to unit 4, what is unit 4 about? So unit 4 is industry, right? Unit 4 will shift gears completely because we move from agriculture to industry, right? We are moving towards industry. So we are going to talk about, I'll write it here. So in unit 4, we have, first off, we have overview of agri industrial growth. We have overview of industrial growth. So this topic will discuss how has Indian industry grown since independence and what are the trends. Okay, we are going to talk about the trends in it. Then we have competitiveness again, and how competitive is Indian industry domestically and in exports. This is what we're going to talk in competitiveness, right? Then we have policy regimes. Now what do we mean by policy regimes? We mean that how did industrial policy change from the license raj era. So we had something called as the license raj era. And how did we move from this to liberalization? Because this ended at the time of the LPG policies, right? So then we moved towards liberalization. So this is what we need to discuss. How did this shift happen, right? Then we need to talk about what are MSMEs and versus large industries. Okay, so what are MSMEs and what are large industries exactly? How do we classify these? Okay, so this is what we are going to talk about. In this, we are going to talk about a very important concept which is called missing middle. Missing middle. This is a very important concept in it. And why does India have lots of tiny firms, right? And some very large ones, but very few medium sized firms. Okay, so this is what we're going to talk about. And then we'll have a debate on public versus private sector. Public versus private sector is what we're going to cover in this. That what is the role of public sector enterprises today? We're going to look at that. And lastly, some miscellaneous topics would be employment that we need to see. Then we need to talk about formal jobs versus informal jobs, or we can say formal versus informal sectors, right? And we'll talk about infrastructure and infrastructure bottlenecks specifically. What do we mean by infrastructure bottlenecks? This means that how poor roads, power, and logistics they affect industrial growth. How do they hold in infrastructure back, hold them back, right? So these are the bottlenecks, like these are the disturbances due to which infrastructure usually suffers, right? And then lastly, we're going to talk about some research and development, like is India investing enough in innovation or not? So unit 4 is basically going to tell us that whether why India has not become a manufacturing powerhouse like China is, for example, right? Why has India not achieved what China has already achieved, or some other Southeast Asian countries for that matter? Okay, and we'll talk about what needs to be changed, right? So see, look here. We have discussed. I'll just mention here. This is that something we have talked about unit 1, right? This is unit 2, then we had unit 3, and then we had unit 4. So we had a quick discussion of all these units now. Okay. Okay, so now let me show you the actual question paper that came. And as you can see, this is the paper, Sectoral Issues in an Economy. We all know the exam format. We have 3 hours with us, and the paper is of 90 marks. And we have to solve 5 questions, right? We have to attempt 5 questions, and all questions carry equal marks, which is 18 marks, right? And question number one, I'll come to question number one, and question number one is compulsory, okay? Question number one is compulsory for all people to attempt. Okay, so let's come to question number one. So question number one is a compulsory question, and it says discuss the major features of agricultural performance during the first 4 decades of independence in India. Also explain the major determinants of agricultural growth in India. Okay, this is the first question. Now listen to me very carefully. This question is from unit 1. I'll write it here. This question came from unit 1. Okay, क्वेश्चन नंबर टू देखो. क्वेश्चन नंबर टू इज डिस्पाइट increase in agricultural productivity and appropriate food security policies, what are the reasons behind persistent undernutrition in India? Discuss policies that aim to mitigate this problem. Okay, so this question is from unit 2, and as we are discussed right now, unit 2 talks about food security and nutritional concerns, right? So this question is from unit 2. Then look at question number 3. Question number 3 is examine the impact of cash transfer and in kind food transfer on poverty alleviation in India. So this question is also from unit 2, because it's talking about subsidies versus cash transfer, and also about the PDS system, right, and welfare policies, right? Okay, coming to question number 4. So question number 4 dekho. Question number 4 is increase in MSP, which is the minimum support price, more than the cost of cultivation under agricultural price policy, which is the APP, leads to market distortion and food deprivation. You have to discuss this. And they also ask that what is the alternative argument. Okay, so this question came from unit 2 again. This question came from unit 2 again, and this question needs you to discuss about MSP and APP in detail, right? Okay, then coming to question number 5. Question number 5 is examining the potential benefits and challenges of e-platform for national agricultural market, right? So this question is from unit 3, which was the current issues in Indian agriculture. And this question wants you to talk about marketing infrastructure, right? We need to talk about marketing infrastructure in here, and about the new technology, marketing infrastructure and new technology. Okay, so this was question number 5. Then coming to question number 6. This is question number 6. Question number 6 is explain why transformation of Indian agriculture is necessary for overall growth, inclusiveness, and sustainability. So, three key terms that you need to focus on: growth, inclusiveness, and sustainability. Now, this question is from unit 3 again. This is from unit 3, and it wants you to discuss about sustainable agricultural growth and about the structural transformation. About structural transformation. Okay, this is what you need to discuss in this particular question. Then come to question number 7. Question number 7, like I told you, missing middle problem is very important, and we'll discuss it in detail. So question number 7 wants you to discuss the missing middle problem in Indian manufacturing sector. Okay, so this question is from unit 4. From unit 4, it wants you to talk about MSMEs and the scale of the industries and ownership, mostly ownership in Indian industries. Okay. Then come to question number 8. Question number 8 is explain the trends. You have to explain the trends of industrial growth after independence. Okay, very important. And what do you mean by industrial stagnation? And which factors were responsible for industrial stagnation in India after the mid 60s? Okay, so this question is also from unit 4 again, right? This wants you to talk about the overview of industrial scene. What are the trends Okay, what are the trends and trends in growth and policies, right? Okay, this wants you to talk about trends in growth and policy. Then coming to question number 9, which is for PH candidates, but I'll just take this up. You can do this question for practice. This is, what is the role of planning in Indian economy since independence? Okay, so it is asking you about the role of planning in Indian economy and explain the relationship between markets and governance in India. Okay, so this question cuts across unit 1 and unit 4. Okay, so this wants you to talk about the development strategy and industrial policy. Okay, so as you can see, out of the 9 questions that we discussed, I'll zoom it out of the 9 questions that we discussed, one is from unit 3. Which question is from unit 3? Can you identify? Question number 6. Okay, question number 6 is from unit 3. Then 3 questions are from unit 2. This one and this one. 3 questions, 2, 3 and 4 are from unit 2. So this makes unit 2 a very important unit, right? Then 2 are from unit 3, question number 5 and question number 6. And sorry, question only one question is from unit 1. Okay, the first question is from unit 1, right? And then 2 are from unit 4. So we have 2 questions from unit 4, which is question number 7 and question number 9, right? So now, coming to what is my plan for you guys. What is my plan for you guys? Let me talk about that. Okay, so now let me tell you my plan for covering this paper completely for you. So what I'm going to do, unit by unit and question by question. So for each unit I will first explain the key concepts to you guys, right? I'll explain the key concepts and readings in very simple language. So, for example, guys, I've gone through each of these papers for you. So, this is a paper on Indian agriculture. And if you want to pause and read the abstract, you will get it, what this paper is about. And if you also want to read this paper, but it's 45 pages long, so I don't think that it would be viable for you to go through this. But in case you want to use it for your answer writing, I'll share this paper on Telegram with you. You can follow me on Telegram and just DM me, and I'll share this paper with you. Similarly, I have also gone through this paper, which is from Niti Aayog, and it's also about Indian agriculture. Then there is Swaminathan report, National Commission on Farmers. So this is also a very important paper to understand about the situation of farmers, irrigation, productivity of agriculture, about insurance and food security. If you want to read about it, you can on your own. Otherwise, I'll be covering it all in the upcoming videos. And then there is agriculture in India. So how has it been all these years? So I have done the homework on your behalf, and this is what I'll be covering on in the upcoming videos. And as you can see, this is just a glimpse. I have just found out some very important questions for you, and this is all from unit 1. Okay, so this is all what we would be covering. Then I'll solve the PYQ questions from that unit, and I'll give you the full model answers also. I'll give you the full answers, how to attempt those particular questions, right? And then I'll give you some extra important questions. I'll give you some extra questions also to practice that are likely to come, and I'll frame it from the syllabus and all the important readings that we have. And then I'll give you some strategy tips also that will help you to structure your answer, and you'll know that what to write in introduction and conclusion, and which authors and data points, which is very important for this paper. Okay, authors and data points you can quote is very important, so you can mention these in your answers to impress the examiner. Okay, so all right guys, this was all for this particular video, and I hope now you have a very clear picture of what this paper is, what each unit covers, and where each PYQ question is coming from, because we have discussed both, right? We have discussed all the units, and we have also seen the questions that arises from each units, right? So if this was helpful, please like this video and subscribe to Economics Verified, because the next video, which in which we'll be covering unit 1 entirely with full model answers, is coming very soon. And you can also drop your questions in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.